Hi, thanks for joining us. Happy you could be here on today's show. We've got Paul Aucoin, who he's literally grown a business from the basement, the prototypical entrepreneur from his basement. Grew it to 23 employees and $15 million in sales before selling it. Had a wealth of expertise there. He's now written on it and is sharing the lessons he learned along the way. Here's my conversation with Paul. Paul, thanks for joining us here today, fellow Canadian from Vancouver, right?
Right on. Yeah, happy to be here.
Great to see you. What are things like on the West Coast these days?
Well, it was really hot, and now it's really cool. So that's the coast.
That's what you get, right? That's what you get. Well, and glad to have you here. Thanks for agreeing to be here. You're obviously a seasoned vet. You've been in the trenches. People like to hear some of the war stories. How did you cut your teeth originally? The first business. How did you build it originally? What was the business that I guess as you wrote grew and subsequently sold, right?
Right. I'm an engineer. I got my degree at Concordia University in Montreal, and I realized early on I wanted to be in the sales business because there were a lot of guys that were smarter book-wise than I was, and so I gravitated to that. I ended up getting into a sales engineering job in the HVAC industry. And I did that with the same company for 13 years. I moved from place to place. I wanted to grow. I wanted to increase my responsibility. I wanted to take over a franchise. And then the parent company decided they weren't going to let that happen anymore. They were buying back all of the franchises. So they used to be all independently owned, and they just owned the big ones. Anyway, they bought them all back. So at some point, I was trying to get ahead in Vancouver. I'd moved to Vancouver trying to get ahead, and I hit a ceiling. All the management positions were taken. And so opportunity came to start my own company, HVAC supply, custom air handling units and chillers, big equipment for big buildings. And so I did. I started in the basement of my house with my just myself and my dog. And that's where it all started. And we eventually had 4 people in my basement, including myself. And then my wife was going a little crazy. So you got to get out of here. So we moved into an office and eventually grew that to 23 people. I had taken on a partner at some point in the process. And he and I, one of us needed to go.
Let's wait on that. Let's wait on that.
Okay.
I do want to get into it as as a lawyer, commonly getting into bringing partners in and what the pros and cons of that, and then how these relationships can come to an end. It's just interesting. Your story is, with a prototypical from the basement, right? And we had a lot of people say, what does it take? It's like, well, that's what it takes. Blood, sweat, and tears. Grow by the sweat of your own brow, and take it to the spot, where you did, right, as a going concern, right? The partner and you, obviously, as people begin things with the best of intentions, it doesn't always work that way. In your experience, obviously, with this partner, you get the spot where it got legal, right? And we're talking offline of the use of a shotgun clause. As a lawyer, quite frequently have a conversation with people saying to them, do you require something in your shareholders agreement to break a deadlock, right? If you can't deal with an issue any other way, to allow for a deadlock to be broken. A shotgun clause being whereby it's really a buy-sell agreement, whereby somebody's going, right? You're literally holding up a shotgun. Either you go or I go, right? Is kind of the way that it transpires. You explain to people many times. Most don't ever, fortunately, I would think, ever have to go through the experience. You did, right? So talk us through, with what you're comfortable, explaining how you got to where it was and what it felt like to implement the shotgun clause.
So yeah, my partner and I, we had different core values essentially about how the business should run, and that was increasingly becoming a problem. And we were trying to resolve it. And then he and I had a conversation that basically got to the point where he didn't want to talk to me anymore. That was it. We weren't talking. And he said, you should just buy me out. And so I was like, okay, so that sounds like an option. I mean, he's mentioning it. We should probably think about doing that. And as part of our legal partnership agreement, we had a compulsory buyout, also known as a shotgun clause, in that agreement. And I was in a peer advisory group as a client. So I was one of the business owners. So there was 8 business owners. We'd meet every month for 5 hours. We had a facilitator. Facilitator would, we'd each spend some time getting advice from each other. We acted as a board of directors for each other, basically is how it worked. So from of course, I brought it to the group, and there was a significant amount of experience in the group. And one in particular had said, you need to talk to this guy before you do anything about the shotgun. He went through it and it did not go the way he planned. You want to be prepared for how it might not go the right way. Because the way you normally think, oh, shotgun, I'll offer him this because, he obviously, I'm the one that should be in the business. He shouldn't be. I'll offer him a fair price and he'll take it. I'll give it to him and he'll leave. That doesn't happen very often that way.
You have to, as you say, be prepared for something else to occur. With the other person that looked in on this, was this a lawyer, or how did they know? They obviously had been through it themselves.
They were so this facilitator, business coach, he had another client who went through it. So he was part of another board. And so he had, and part of their board, interestingly enough, so he says, okay, so his situation, he's recounting this to me, the other business owner. He says, so they said, oh, I think the business is worth $1.5 million. And so I'm going to offer him, 1.2 essentially, to buy him out, that value for his shares. And the group says, you better not do that. What if he buys you at 1.2? He says, well, he's not going to buy me. He doesn't have the money. He doesn't have enough experience or the wherewithal. I'm the guy with all the experience. He's told me he could never run this company, et cetera, et cetera. Not going to be able to do it. And, but they convinced him. He says, no, you got to offer him that full 1.5. You have to get to the point where you'd at least be okay with him buying you out. Well, of course, what happens? He buys him out. He buys him out. However, he was not ready emotionally for this at all. It just devastated him. He was he had his head in his hands for the next 3-4 years because he was not prepared. He clearly that didn't work for him. So I had that experience before I did mine. I listened to this guy tell almost his situation and my situation were so close, so similar, that was just oh my God. So I have to be ready for this.
Yeah, that's just what it is. We tell people, I mean, a lot of these things we're not inventing, right? You've gone on to write on this, and you mentioned this, the peer advisory group. There's a lot of textbook things that happen, right? As we build businesses and exit businesses, this being one of them, right? I bring a partner on, and when things fall apart, or if things fall apart, the exit itself. So you were able to do it through the agreement itself, though, right? You had the agreement, an offer went in. And it was, I guess, a transaction was consummated ultimately, right?
Ultimately consummated. Yeah. There are some complications, and we had 3 other companies that didn't have the proper agreements. So those got a little messy, but they weren't big deals. So, and according to, I don't know, read a stat about how many business owners with partners, they write the agreement, they go through it, and half of them don't get signed.
Yes. As a lawyer, you're advising people, because it's they don't actually have to complete it. It's the best advice to put it into place. A lot of people talk of it, and they don't ever do it, right? And those are the ones that typically need it as well, right? They're the ones that typically need to rely upon it, where they haven't done the work, and that's an unfortunate thing, and that's a tough lesson to learn down the road as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very valuable for us to have it, because there's no way that the negotiation would have went nearly as cleanly if we didn't have that.
That's right, and that's why they're there. So you've learned some lessons along the way.
Yeah.
You're still involved in the peer advisory side of things as well?
Yes, a little bit. I still do that. I still coach a few business owners. That's still part of my business. I'm mostly retired. I wrote a book that was published 2 years ago. It's on Audible. And it was the psychology. The name of the book is called Bulletproof Your Mindset. Take and think like a business owner. And basically, if you meet a successful business owner and you say, oh, that's too bad that happened. Whose fault was it at your company that happened? Well, the ultimately responsible, successful business owner is going to say, buck stops with me. You know what? Our company screwed up. It's me. I'm going to deal with it, but it's I take responsibility. And the people, as they're, when you're growing your business, as you're learning, it's really natural, very common to say, oh, the competitors are too tough, the pricing's too low, I can't get any employees. So these are the types of things. This is part of the challenges of being a business owner, and realizing those types of things are going to come up, and realizing that when you start getting frustrated, that's actually when you're growing. That's when you said, I've had enough of this, I'm frustrated. And as soon as you realize that that's happening, realizing that you don't want to get stuck. So it's just a matter of figuring out how you're going to get unstuck. Talk to people like yourself. Maybe I'll talk to my lawyer to say, hey, this is the situation I've got. Can you help me? And those types of people that go and search out advice when they get stuck, those are the people that become successful.
And that's just it, right? I mean, it's a good philosophy for business. It's a good philosophy for life, right? When we're meeting resistance and we overcome that, that's how that does lead to growth, whether it be just from a business perspective, but also life. So you learn that, you learn some lessons along the way, and clearly learn those and written on them, and continue to coach people. If you're coaching a business owner, for both business and life, what are some of the key things that you like to impart upon them?
Well, there's one acronym that I came up with, which is in the book, which I feel is a good way to remember when you get into a sticky situation. So we talked about being frustrated. So one of the things that I learned along the way was that when you get frustrated and you're almost always blaming. So blaming and anger, those two things kind of go together. So, if you can not be angry, if you notice you're getting frustrated, okay, I need to take control of the situation. So that's really what you want to do, is you don't want to blame, you don't want to put it on somebody else. You want to take control of that situation. Certainly hire a lawyer, for instance, might be one of those ways to take control. Don't get frustrated, find a way to solve that problem. So what the acronym is, so the ABC is the first three letters, and then one, ABC1, but ABC. So when you're angry and you're blaming, so when you're noticing those things are happening, that's the key. If you can notice, so anger could also be frustration or something else like that. When you notice that's happening, you need to take control. That's the C. C is for control. I need to take control somehow in this situation. How am I going to do it? I don't know. The guy, I'm driving in my car, somebody cut me off. I'm really mad at them. What do I do? How do I take control of that situation? And so, because if you stay blaming, you're the loser. This is one of the things that I learned early, is that if you blame, you're the loser. You're the one that has these bad feelings. This person's driven off. Who knows? Maybe they're just late for their first day of work or something, and they're driving like a maniac. I mean, that's almost the way you have to think of it. Okay, they're just in a hurry. Just let it go. So then you can feel okay. Otherwise, if you take all that anger and you manifest that yourself, you're the loser. So I was always a competitive guy, sports and all that kind of stuff. So when I got that in my head, that I was the loser whenever I started blaming somebody, I was like, I have to stop doing that. I can't do that anymore. I have to take control somehow of this situation. So that was the beginning. That's the beginning of the acronym. And then you actually mentioned earlier on about the intent, when you talk about, so my partner, I originally bring him on, he had the best of intent. I had the best of intent for him. Everybody seems like we're all going, sailing the ship the same way. But when you're trying to manage these emotions, when you're blaming, you're upset, you're frustrated, you actually, one of the best ways of getting out of that is to believe the other person has good intent. So even my partner, who, acrimonious as it was, is that he had his own reasons. For me to get mad at him, it's like, it doesn't do me any good. So I have to think that he's doing it for his own reasons. What could those be? And it's easy to kind of come up with some of them, right? He's in his own place in his life. He's got his family, whatever else is going on. He's got that. And so in his life, he may go, you know what? I got to get rid of Paul because I have to take this company on because that's my life. Otherwise, I have to wait for 3 years in this non-compete thing that I can't do business. So, he might not have had any options that he felt like he could really go to. So for him to buy me out, like some people would say, oh, that's totally unexpected. Well, not if you thought about him, And so if you can give up being angry in those situations, and in my book, I talk about some other brutal example where I got totally screwed on some supply situation from a supplier who admitted they totally screwed up, and I could be mad at them forever. But that just doesn't help my head. It doesn't help my mindset.
It doesn't serve, right?
Me.
Yeah, it distracts you. It takes you away from the ultimate goal, right? Or
exactly.
betterment.
Exactly.
Oh, powerful stuff. And again, from business to life, right? It's certainly a philosophy that that works well. So you've learned it. You've written on it. Obviously, you're teaching others this. What else are you doing with your time now? I mean, you're not doing it. You're not in business the way you were working previously. What else do you do with your time?
I golf quite a bit.
That's a good thing to say.
Yeah, we bought a place down in Palm Springs. So we were down there for 5 or 6 months a year, and met a lot of similar situations, and so doing that. But I'm really trying to, one of the things that I wish I could take back was, you're a business owner and you're running a company. Let's say it's like 8 people, 10 people, 15 people. So there's people around you, and you look at them and you say, oh, they're kind of where I was, I'm sure they're doing fine. They don't really need too much of my advice, other than, I'll give them the technical advice, but, they don't really need the heart-to-heart stuff. They'll, and that's a mistake. And as a leader, those little conversations that we have, those, open up and, hey, how's it going? How's life? And, let me help you. How do you feel about your career? You feel your career's going right? Like offering advice or just listening to people, even in your own company, is so valuable. And those people will remember that forever. Oh my God, I got this gem of advice one day from my boss.
Yeah, they take that with them, right? And again, this is from this conversation, showing there's so much more to it, right? It's life. I mean, yes, as we talk business, but it's so much beyond that, and it's the types of things that we speak of to lead a fulfilling life, right? It's interesting. You mentioned that the things that you realize now or would have done more of if you'd realized earlier. If you had a do-over, it's interesting. The company and the space that you got into. I mean, certain situations are handed to you, right? And it sounds like that this was to you at the time as well. You obviously had the sense to know what your skills were, right? To where your strengths were, and then I think it helped define the way you were able to lead things or do things. Going back to Concordia days, or like the do-over, from education. Just let's parallel life here for a minute. Where else would things have taken you, Paul, if you chosen differently?
Oh, I don't know. The connection with the sales thing came because I couldn't find any work one summer. I was working with a landscaper contractor, and his work dried up, and I had like 6 weeks left. I had to make money for tuition, and I took a job I answered an ad, showed up, and oh, it's selling encyclopedias door to door. I'm like, oh my God. Well, I learned so much about personal psychology that it just blew me away. You know, like all this uncommon common sense that's available out there and all these books and stuff. And oh my goodness, yeah, the stories of what I had knocking on people's doors and how my sales manager knew exactly what was going to happen. Exactly. After talking to him a little bit, he told me to come back to this door that I thought, oh, we're just going to come back and pick up that sale in an hour. And he goes, no, we're not even going back. I go, what are you talking about? They want it. They said, just come back. We're 95%. Yeah, no, we're not going back. He says, you go back. If you go back, you get the whole sale. I'm like, what? I run back, knock on the door. She didn't even take the chain off the door. We were sitting in there with her for over an hour. Didn't take the chain off the door and said sorry. And I was just like, wow.
So what are these small, yeah, it's interesting, right? And he knew, again, you learn along the way. So what are some of these insights or some of the psychology of things that he was aware of and taught you?
Well, that particular one was really interesting. Was that we were in there, we're talking to the wife and the husband. You have to have the wife and the husband together, the two people in the relationship, whoever they may be. And he said, so we're talking, and it's going, and you're in those days, in these cases, you focus on the person generally in charge of the household, generally the wife. And you're just checking in with the husband. You're checking in, talk. And all of a sudden, the husband got up and went to the kitchen. And he said when that happened and he didn't come back, 5 minutes later, the sale was gone. That was it. And he stopped the presentation. He's still talking to her, waiting. Finally, he just kept going, and then we left. And he says, yeah, when that happened, we were done. And that was so insightful. I mean, I think one of the things that I've come to realize is that people, generally speaking, aren't very good communicators. All of us. None of us are. We try, but it's so easy for us to mess up what it was that we wanted to say. And especially if we're trying to be funny, or especially if we're kind of trying to, get on the edge of funny, humor. And it's so easy to mess that up. And so somebody will mess it up and somebody be offended. They're like, wow, that's so bad. And meanwhile, the person went, no, that's not what I meant. And then they're already kind of screwed it up. So they're not going to say anything. So people walk away and they're all offended. And all it was somebody trying to make a joke. And this person is just they're a nice person anyway. And those people, if you hear somebody say something that's like, I might be offended there. Hang on a second. I wonder if I should be. I'm going to pretend this person has good intent, and I'm going to say, oh, that's interesting that you said that. I don't know if I feel the same way. Can you say that another way? And if you're able to give somebody another chance to clarify something maybe a little controversial, something that upsets you, you give them a chance, you give them a break, you try to let them correct their communication mishap. You're going to have a friend for life there. That's going to, oh, thank you so much for letting me correct myself. That was, that's not what I meant. And I think that happens a lot.
It certainly does happen a lot, right? Communication is key, and to ensure you're communicating the right way. What are some of the most effective ways to ensure you're getting your message across clearly?
I would say, depending on the type of message that you're trying to get across. I mean, if it's really important, you can always have them, can you, I'm not sure if I said that clearly. What did you get from what I just said? I mean, if you're talking to like an employee, for instance, if you're to the boss, you're talking to an employee, this is what I want you to do. Can you just like repeat back to me? I mean, like that's one way. But having them talk back, tell me more about what you think, so, or what do you think about what I just said there? Does that make sense to you? That's, there's I would say that the more you learn about communication, you should become the leader of the communication in the room. So if you're in a group of people, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and you sense, oh, I wonder if he meant that. Oh, I see somebody took offense to that. You take it on. Don't let somebody else take it on. The more you learn about this stuff, the more you just jump in and say, hey, Joe, what did you just say? Can you say that again? Just, and then you can say, wow, that's not the way I think. I think differently but you know what? I learn from people that think differently than me. So, tell me why you think that way. And that's, that if you can come up with a couple of lines like that make it okay. Imagine they have good intent. That's the key, is like, never be offended. Like, you can get yourself to the point where you can never be offended. And if you think about what that takes, and you still have an interest in people and empathy and all those types of things, is that whenever you do feel yourself getting offended, you go, okay, well, this person's in a different space. This person was brought up this way. This person has these ideas. This person listens to these types of people, reads these types of literature, or grew up in this type of job or this type of environment, or is from a different country, on and on and on it goes. There's so many different ways that people can get their own opinions. And it's just great to say, where are you hearing that from? Oh, you got it from that. Oh, you got to watch this video. You're like, oh, okay, well, all right. Why don't you send me that video, because you're a friend, and we really differ on this one thing. I had a friend, he was way off on this other tangent. And I'm like, I'm on the other side. And I'm like, tell me more. Why are you thinking about this? Well, this guy, blah, blah, blah. You gotta, okay. So I Googled that guy. He sent me the video. I watched it. I Googled him some more, read. And I realized, okay, my friend doesn't really know the whole story. This person, there is major flaws with this person. But he wasn't, we were talking about climate change, and I've got a lot of background in climate change. My friend is a little newer at it.
Not as much, and is into conspiracy theories, is what I'm hearing here. But the key thing, as you say, is to get through, back to your philosophy, almost the ABC, right? Don't be offended, do your learning, take responsibility, and that leads to good things, right? That's both, again, as we say, through business and in personal as well. What good things are coming for you, Paul? What do you have next lined up for you?
Well, I am planning on promoting my book. Like I said, I wrote it 2 years ago, but I've just talked about it with my immediate Facebook friends. That's it. I haven't promoted it on LinkedIn or anything. So I do have some webinars and some seminars that I'm going to be doing that is basically teaching this skill. That's part of what I am planning on doing, mostly around the book. I don't know that I want to write a book again, because the first one took me 2 years to write. I got the first draft done in 6 months, and 2 years later, I was.
Well, it's quite an endeavor, right? I mean, certainly you always understand how enormous an undertaking it actually is. So it's great to hear from that. If people want to get a hold of the book or chat with you further, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, my website is paulaucoin.com. You might need to look up the spelling of my last name on the notes, but it's Aucoin. And my book, and I've got a calendar there that you can book. You can read more about me there. I'm on LinkedIn. There's my information there. Happy to talk or engage with anybody.
That's great, Paul. Appreciate that. Happy to, as you say, talk, engage with any further. I like to end these episodes with one thing that someone can take with them through the rest of the day, through the rest of the week after this episode drops. I think you've given us a wealth of information from this conversation. But what's one thing you could point to somebody that's maybe earlier stage, building their business, building their life? What's something that you would say to them, hey, if you could do this one thing, you're going to be on the right track?
I would say is that when you're frustrated, that's a good thing. You are not going to continue to put up with whatever it is that's frustrating you. And now you want to take a deep breath and figure out how you're going to take control of the situation, even in a very small way. So frustration is good.
Frustration is good. That's great stuff. As fun as it sounds to say, right? Thanks so much for this, Paul. Appreciate having you, and I look forward to the next time on The Millionaire's Lawyer.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you very much.